Hi everyone, I'm Danny. Welcome to Neither Here Nor There, Conversations Across
Religion and Faith. Hi everyone, my name is Christina. So today we're going to talk about this concept of religion and faith.
Hot topic. That is a hot topic. Everyone, Christina chooses all the topics, so I'm going to throw her under the bus right now. This is her idea, not mine.
I think it's really aligned with kind of where we're going with this season. As you heard us talk about it last episode, this season we're focusing a lot on crossroads. So for me personally, I know Danny, you asked about this earlier. I do think when we, humanity, are at a crossroad, oftentimes religion and faith plays a role. Not for everyone, but plays a role.
I agree.
Do you think so?
You say a religion or faith? Mm-hmm. Both?
Either or. Because for some people it's either or, right? Sometimes it is a more structured religion and sometimes people just have this faith.
So that's actually interesting that you say that because I actually do separate the two. I think religion and faith are completely different things. Yes, they are often intertwined, but I had to go on the interweb and search for the definition of both of them because I needed some clarity about this. So according to Google, according to Oxford Languages on Google, religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods.
Okay.
Okay, and then the sub notes about it. Religion is a particular system of faith and worship, and religion is a pursuit of or interest followed with great devotion.
Okay.
Okay, that's the first one. Let's go to faith now. Faith is a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And faith is strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof.
Conviction, I like that word. Yeah.
So, I feel like the definitions for both of them, I feel like they have contrasts in them. We'll take faith, for example. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something and a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion. That second part ties it so... Okay. What's the question?
I think to start off, before we dive into all these questions, I just want to clarify today's conversation. We're not necessarily going to debate the merits of religion or the merits of faith or all of that, as in, we'll never be better at explaining this to everyone. I think it's more just the concept of that and how that's applicable to our lives.
Yeah, and obviously, as we're talking about this, we're not trying to step on anyone's toes. And I know this is because religion and faith has been a hot topic for just centuries. Just always.
It's always going to be debated, and there's a lot of views on it. And I don't think there's any right or wrong. There's a lot of history culture, traditions attached to all of this. So, who are we to really say anything about it?
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going down this rabbit hole. Go for it.
Curious to know. Growing up, kind of what has your relationship with religion and faith, either or, both, has been?
It's changed a lot over the decades.
Okay.
My father was Catholic, my mother was Buddhist. They grew up that way, but they both purported that they weren't religious at all growing up. So we didn't really have, we weren't baptized because my mother wasn't Catholic, and towards the end of my dad's life, he liked to say that he was more Buddhist than my mother because he liked to go to temple, whatever. But I only realized recently that a lot of my life, even though my mother said that she wasn't Buddhist or anything, she did have a lot of the teachings of it. And I think, especially for me, the last couple of years in discovering myself, I find myself gravitating more towards Buddhism, which is a very interesting thing for me because I never categorized myself as religious, and I still don't think I am. But if there was a religion for me to choose, it would be Buddhism.
Interesting.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, just pause there. Just curious. But growing up, there wasn't a religion that your family was adhering to necessarily.
No, but if there was one, it would be Buddhism.
Okay.
It was interesting to me to learn that when we were younger, my father would go to my mother and say, and he would be anxious about something, and she would be like, okay, do you want to go to temple? We can give an offering, or we can go to a fortune teller. And that put him at ease.
Interesting.
And I was surprised to learn it because I only learned this a couple months, maybe a month or two ago.
Oh, wow.
Before we were even going to discuss religion, And I found that very interesting. It was more of a comfort to him than his original religion,
Yeah.
which was he grew up Catholic, and he often talked about how he liked Catholicism as in the community that he was raised in. His Catholic church really helped him and took him in. Sunday school was great because it was a community, right? And he always talked really highly of the priest that was there who took him in when he was on the streets by himself when he was 17. And, that was really interesting. So when I was younger, I found it as like a restricting institution. And as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more relaxed in my views of religion. And faith is a whole different topic, but that's my...
Kind of your relationship growing up with it.
Yeah, and obviously, as you said earlier, about religion being like a thing, like a crossroads for people, I do think that's true. I mean, it's true for me. So, yeah, give me your origin story on religion.
Yeah, so my mother, she grew up in Taiwan, of course, so Buddhism and Taoism have always played a big role in her life, going to temple and all of that. My father grew up in a Christian household, so he has always been very Christian in that sense, and always going to church and all of that. However, as many of you now know, I did grow up in Peru, in Latin America, which is a very Catholic country. So actually, growing up, I went to a Catholic school.
Yeah.
So for me, from very early on, Catholicism has played a role in the sense of I actually know a lot about the religion. We had religion class every week, so I know a lot about the religion. I know a lot about the institution and all of that. We had to pray and all of that. With that said, funnily, I was never baptized, so I could I wasn't able to participate in a lot of the ceremonies and all of that. So like First Communion and whatnot, which all my friends did. So I did witness a lot of the kind of these aspects of their lives without partaking in which is actually an experience in itself. But with that said, I do have a lot of activities going to mass and all of that. So I do find a sense of comfort going to a Catholic church. Actually, I do find it peaceful, and I do find it very calming in that sense. Yet growing up with my family, we do go to a Christian church, which is slightly different in that sense, a different setup and all of that. But maybe because of that, it does feel a little bit more rebellious for me. Like I don't feel as comforted there. I don't feel as calm in that setting, even though you can argue they're very similar within the structures. But yeah, so that's kind of how I've interacted with religion. I've had my ups and downs, I think, with religion in itself. Growing up, maybe was definitely adhered more to like the Bible and all of that. And then I went through a phase probably of less being more feeling like I control my like own life feeling. And then now that I am in my 30s, maybe changing that a little bit more.
It's interesting how you say that you find more comfort in a Catholic church than you do in a Christian church. Is it because school was a comfort growing up and therefore you associate that Catholic church with
You know
school?
what? It's recently actually with my sister who was brought up in a very similar setting. We were trying to kind of seek comfort or go to like a place, and we were like, oh, maybe we should just pop into church or something, like a Christian church, because there's more of that in Taiwan, or at least more accessible. And somehow we were both like standing in front of one. We were like, this doesn't seem as inviting. Like this doesn't seem as like straightforward. Versus like, we actually looked up like where is the nearest Catholic church, because it felt more like, oh, we can just pop in. Like no one has to know our business. We can just pop in and do our thing. So I do find a sense of comfort in that, more than anywhere else. I guess.
I'm gonna have to go test out different churches now. I don't frequent church. The only churches that I really walk into are the ones that are like I'm a tourist visiting some fancy European church. I do have that same concept for temples now. So growing up, we did go to temple, like, to pay respects to our grandparents on my maternal side. And it was funny because I do actually think that my dad was more into the whole the temple thing than my mom was. And I think, honestly, she went because of him. But in the last couple of months, I find myself walking into temple, and it is a comfort, and it's a respect. It's like me paying respects to my ancestors, the people that have passed, as well as a little bit of respect and time out for me. It's kind of like a meditation.
Yeah.
It's a time out for me to be calm. Yeah. To like take a moment out of my day. Yeah. To do something completely different.
And that for me is a Catholic church.
And it's something completely different that has no expectations. Yeah. There's no one being like, you have to do this, you have to go there, you have to like, there's no expectation. I can just walk in, pay my respects, and then go back to life. It's nice. I find comfort in that. So I'm not religious. I say that. I've been reading like, a bit of scripture recently, just as like a curiosity. I've been meaning to do that for all the different Bibles or books of worship, just to,
compare and
contrast, a curiosity, and yeah, so that's me on religion. I'm not really for a institution or any, because like I like to, mix and match a little bit. I'm mixed. That kind of comes with the territory, I suppose. But yeah.
So, and then how about this concept of faith? Oh. How do you feel like how do you view that, this idea? It doesn't even have to be a faith in necessarily a God or a particular doctrine of a religion, but what's this idea of faith for you?
I want to say one last thing about religion before we go into faith. Okay. It says here the belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. In my mind, I do actually believe that is true. I am agnostic, not atheist. I believe that there is something, but it's something that I am unable to comprehend. Uh-huh. And so I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's like a human-shaped thing. But I do think that there is something.
A higher power.
There is some kind of something. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is. I can't comprehend it. My brain is too tiny. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to like just compare my beliefs and the Google definition. Okay. And then moving on to faith, complete trust or confidence. Faith is the complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Over the years, I've changed that faith as faith in myself. Mm-hmm. And so, in a sense, I have faith. I think I've only really...
But I'm curious, because you just mentioned this, like, something, right? This belief in something. This thing that's bigger than your brain can comprehend. Do you have faith in this something?
I think it's slightly egotistical to think that they particularly find me interesting or find our human race interesting. Okay. Or I'm open to the idea, but I have no conclusive evidence, so I move on with life without thinking about it much.
Okay, so for you, this something is not necessarily an entity that is overseeing people.
Possibly are. I mean, you have all those like ideas of we are in a virtual game, we are in a whatever. Maybe I'm a Sims character for an alien race somewhere else. Maybe there is, but I don't have any proof. I can't do anything about it.
But I guess I'm trying to attach whether there's a relationship, because if you have faith in it, it also means you do place some sort of higher belief in that. And it sounds like you're actually detaching those two things.
Kind of am.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not because I completely reject it. It'd be nice if there was, but until I have definitive proof, I'm gonna chug on. Mm-hmm. Keep going with it. Mm-hmm. See what happens. And enjoy life a little bit, instead of being bogged down by universal questions. I mean, are there aliens out there? Likely. Yeah. But I don't know, so I'm not gonna drive myself crazy thinking about it. Okay. Yeah. What about you and faith?
That's very interesting, because I do have a different take on it. I don't view it as a separate thing. I think in moments of need, in moments of desperation, in moments of uncertainty, I do want to believe there is a higher power.
There's a difference between want and
But
reality.
I do place faith in it, right?
So
Versus
it's not want then, it's you
But
do
it's faith.
believe.
I place faith on it.
So you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That there is a higher power
Yeah.
that's
That's the
overseeing
first
it.
time I've ever heard you say that.
It's the same concept as believing in the universe will provide. So I do think there's something, a force behind all of this. All of this.
Provide for who?
For me.
But why you specifically?
For everyone. But the faith that I have is for me. I cannot force that faith on everyone else.
What about the 80% of the world that lives in squalor or provides for the other 20%?
The same higher power provides for everything. I don't know if it's one higher power, many higher powers, it doesn't matter. But there is a universe.
Different type of providing, I suppose.
People want different things. And it's not equal, it's not fair, it's not justified, it's not providing equally for everyone. Everyone's life is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gives you comfort?
It gives me comfort to know that I am not fully
Control.
in control.
Yeah, that is a nice comfort, isn't it?
Because I think that's too much pressure on oneself
Yeah.
to also say that everything is like, like you decide for the rest of it. There is, of course, you have to act, you have actions, but there's also this little thing that's floating around that's beyond your control.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't think I have power or control over the things that I cannot control.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why my ideas around religion have softened over the years. When I was younger, more passionate, more like, fuck the institution kind of thing. But I'm not. But the thing is about that is that over the years I've softened towards it because I actually agree with the idea that it gives people comfort. And I think it's nice.
But I think it comes with age. I think the reason why we're going through the same motions, I think it's purely age. I think when one is younger, one has more conviction in life, one feels more empowered. I think there's a higher chance of people feeling that I can do everything. And then with age, you realize it's not all 100% in your hands.
I grew up with a lot of people who were very devout. Very, very devout. And over the years, especially the last couple of years, really broke it off with God. And so they've been a flip side for me. Like, compared to my life, I've grew up with no real, need for religion or faith. And then as I've gotten older, I've really enjoyed the spirituality exploration of it. And they've kind of gone a different way where they started with a belief in the higher power and that they are completely comforted, right? They, someone's watching their back and then they suddenly, fall out and they're like, oh shit, I'm fucking alone. I mean, everyone I think starts to really realize with maturity that they are alone and, but it's, but in theirs, it was like they felt like they were really covered and then they suddenly lost it. And that was quite traumatic, so I hear, from all these different accounts.
Yeah, I think the idea of the dependency of it can feel drastic if you feel like you don't have something to depend on.
And it's quite different from just the dependence that you have as a child with your caregivers, your primary caregivers. At some point you realize they're adults, they're regular human beings, right? And that fantasy kind of breaks. But it's different when it's a powerful entity that's...
Yeah, especially if you are told... if you're ever in need, this entity will solve your problems. I think that's actually really drastic to think that, because then you feel like no harm or no hardship could come your way. And I think reality does hit. And then that's like a drastic impact.
I like to be on the side of religion and say, we don't actually know. Maybe God or an entity or whatever it is actually doing this for a reason. Maybe there is a reason.
Yeah, but if you are not able to be able to see that from a bigger sense, I think it doesn't even have to be religion or faith. At any point, if you go through hardship and you don't view that as like an experience or like a learning or whatnot, it does become harder.
Yeah,
because then you are essentially just weighed down by the experience in itself, and you are not able to see beyond it. And I think that's just inherently human.
It is inherently human, and it's actually incredibly difficult. Some people can spend decades and not even achieve that.
Exactly. So then if you attach that to this idea of like you'll always be comforted, and when you lose that, I can see that being a hard thing to accept.
Misery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love comfort. Comfort's great.
I mean,
to lose it is...
being adult is hard.
Yeah, being an adult is hard.
Okay. So going back a little bit though, because I know we've fluctuated a lot, and I expressed that I do find comfort in moments of need. In moments of need, what do you do then for you?
Wow, that is let's see. When I was younger, I used to drink a lot. Does that count?
There you go.
I'm kidding. All right. Let's not go that way. But no, I'd say now I meditate and I reflect more inwards. And I do have faith. It's a really weird thing to say, like, because again, I'm not religious, but I do have faith in I don't know what's going to happen.
But what's your faith in?
Myself or the situation around me, or things will,
that things will work out?
Well, they might work out for the better or for the worse, but either way, at some point, I'll get a bit of both. I'll get a bit of the positive and the negative.
Why would you call that faith? I'm curious, because it sounds like, yes, a situation will go either one way or the other. It's bound to happen. That's just the reality of it. Why do you think you need faith for that? For me, that's just time. Time moves on and you will have A or B. Or, well, all the other scenarios. But
as a human being, if you don't have faith that things will be okay later, there's no point going on.
Okay. So you do believe things would work out?
In a sense, yeah. In a sense. Yeah. But the thing is, it's more like, I believe that things will work out. Things maybe aren't great now, but they will eventually work out. You can't have joy in life without a little despair to go along with it. It accompanies it. Pain and despair, it accompanies the joys of life, right? And so if I'm in misery or despair or any of those negative emotions, I know that at some point there will be a flip side.
Okay.
Just the same way as when there's a flip side, there's going to be some misery and despair. Does that make sense?
That's very interesting.
You're thinking.
I am, because that means also when you are in moments of peace, you are always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I'm not waiting. Not anymore. Before, I used to be waiting. An anxiety, a nervousness, like, fuck, I'm great right now. Right around the corner is going to be some shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be there. I want to be here. But the thing is, that goes against the grain, for sure. If you're constantly looking for, if you're constantly in, for example, it's the same thing as applied to if you're in a shit place and you're constantly like, okay, the good place. Like, don't think about the bad place. Don't think about it. You're not living in that moment. You're not being present for the moment. And you won't be, it's not so much honoring your feelings of that. It is honoring the feelings of that moment, but it's also understanding that it is a bad moment and that it won't always be this way. And to just be present in the moment for yourself as well as the memories of it. And it, because it is part of the story of Christina, of Dannie. And before, I would be waiting, right? Constantly waiting. Tomorrow's going to be a great day. It's going to be a bright day. But I realized once you finally accept the moment of if it's good or it's bad, you accept it and you feel it and you live in that moment presently. Obviously, it's harder said than done. And also some situations are horrible and shouldn't have to be lived. But when you accept that moment that it is happening and the way that you feel about it, you don't feel too nervous about or wanting for a good moment. Or if you're in a good moment, having that anxiety of something bad's around the corner. You're more presently in the moment. Okay. That's why, and that is, I didn't know this, that's very Buddhist. Did you know that?
I can see that.
Yeah.
Because it's more about living in the moment and be at peace with your current situation.
Oh.
And I think that's, I can see that being a very Buddhist teaching.
What do you think about that entire concept? As it relates to you and religion and faith?
What do you mean?
Like what I just said.
Whether like living in the moment, or the idea of not looking for the flip side of your situation?
I suppose both, but for me it's like I always grew up where like there's always this thing of like bad is just bad, 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 bad. Like, and always this idea of like we gotta just get rid of it. It's like always this negative connotation on it. And yeah, of course some situations are really terrible, but you can't really have the good parts and only the good parts. You just can't. If you did, I mean, there's that whole argument of if everything was light, then nothing would be light. If everything's good, nothing would be good.
Yeah, I understand. For me, I definitely don't wait for the other shoe to drop. I don't ever actually think that, ever.
In a good situation or a bad situation?
In a good situation. I never, or either way, like I don't ever think, actually, I do think bad times will be over, but I don't ever think, oh, the good times, that means something bad's around the corner. I've actually not thought about that ever, fortunately, so I've never lived with that anxiety.
And when you're in a bad situation, are you always like, just wait, it's gonna be good?
You just have to live through it, yeah. Like, I don't think it's forever.
So you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But on that flip side.
Because I know it will end. In a good way, right? Like, I know this is not forever. And fortunately, and I've talked to some friends about this before, I don't usually live in bad times. So I rarely, to be honest, feel like I am in periods of darkness. So that's why for me it's hard to really have to think really hard about, when am I getting out of this period, I guess. Like if they do, I'm not saying my life doesn't have bad moments, but they usually, I don't think they last for too long. So then it's never something I feel like I'm working through it or anything like that.
Quite fortunate.
Very fortunate, I think, for sure. So yeah, so I think it's a different perspective. But with that said, when I do have anxiety, right? But a lot of this anxiety is probably not necessarily bad moments, but maybe big decisions, right? A big move or like a big life choice and whatnot. So it's not a bad situation, but in those moments of need, those are the moments where I have more anxiety. Those are the moments where I seek guidance.
Maybe Christina is just a really good gambler of life. You choose the better roads.
Or I choose a safe road. Maybe I'm more risk averse in that sense.
Oh, okay. That could make sense in terms of our personalities.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So then I definitely, which is fair, right?
Yeah.
That's why I don't have the highest of highs, but I also don't have the lowest of lows.
And I have that.
So then I live in the middle. So as a result, I'm not waiting for the extremes, essentially.
Does that work for you?
I think so. I really enjoy my life.
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with my mom just recently, actually, about how she doesn't really get the highs, the super highs and the super lows, because she doesn't really get them, and she's perfectly fine with living in the middle, that so-called middle road that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I do think it does come down to personality. I wonder if that also affects how people view religion and faith, actually, right? This idea of leaning a lot into it and leaning really away from it. This, in this sense, we'll have to see if people comment on that. So following up, I know you have quite strong and unique views about religion and faith in general, like especially around holidays. I know you've expressed certain like opinions about it. I'm just curious, why do you have such views?
It's just I don't like the stealing of the things. And
Stealing?
Yeah, like remember I told you about, the Christmas tree. Christmas tree.
Oh, like appropriating different cultures, you mean?
Yeah, it's just cultural appropriation.
Oh, okay.
Honestly.
That's what you're against about this
and-
idea of this, not necessarily the idea behind it.
No, and also it's my own immaturity of like, rebellion against the institution kind of thing. It's still a little bit of immaturity. I will admit that. I can admit that. I'm humble enough for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I said that, so like honestly, I think I have really softened my ideas on religion and faith, and I'm very open to people's perspectives on what they believe. More and more each day. I'm not gonna say that I'm very open to it. I'm just saying more and more each day I soften more to it, because I think it's very important. I think everyone does go through it, and some people find religion really late in life because of, like you said, the inflection point in life that they go through. It's the idea of becoming an adult, maturing. You reach that point and your spirituality needs to grow, or it stays the same, or you got to figure something out with your spirituality. It's a thing. It's a human thing. It's a human condition.
Okay. Do you think, so kind of entering that period a little bit, do you think a lot of people share your views in this like idea of rebelling against institution? Like, do people lean away from religion because of that? I feel like I don't actually have examples top of mind, but I feel like that is something that I've heard a lot of people, leaning away from religion and faith, especially from what they grew up, because of rebellion against the institution.
In the modern age, I think, yeah. I think in the age of the internet, yeah, you have all this other information at the tip of your hands. You don't have just, what you have around you, the community that you have around you. You see communities from all across the world. You see them really, and so it kind of breaks that fantasy of, of like one outfit, so to speak.
Yeah, like one way to do things.
Yeah, one way to do things. It kind of breaks that fantasy of it. I'm not saying that's a better way, like, but we talked about this before. Ignorance kind of is bliss, but in terms of my own circle of the people that I know, yeah, similar mindsets.
Okay,
of course, yeah. We grew up all over the world. We've seen many different types of religion. We've seen things work, things not work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you're kind of the same too.
I do find a lot of people that I know around me, maybe not religious, but they do have strong conviction that there is a force working for them instead of against them.
Why working for them?
I think, I will venture a guess. I think people maybe around me feel very fortunate in life, so they always feel like it's a positive force. Versus I can see that also people who might not have life has not always worked out for them can also feel like that force is working against them. And I can also envision that being the reason why people break away from this idea of a higher power, because it's just not working out for them.
What about the people in the middle, I wonder? The people who are like, this is just it.
Do you know many people like that?
No.
I actually, now that I think about it, maybe like a couple of people. Yeah. Some people are more like the engineering types, more like rational, logical. For sure, this is life. Everything is randomness. There's nothing more than just randomness, right? Which is fair enough. Like, we are trying to, we meaning me and people who think similarly, are trying to apply this purpose and meaning on it, which perhaps we're completely wrong and this is all just, randomness, which is fair. But I also have friends who are not necessarily in that camp of like, super logical, super engineering, but who also just believe it's just randomness. So in the past, this was maybe now at this point 10 years ago, I was on a plane that was that the engine caught on fire. So we were like nose diving, and I remember people around me starting to pray, because what do you do in moment of despair? And I think you start trying to find a way out. And when you have nothing in your control, your only way out is to rely on a higher power. And I remember asking the same example to my friend who doesn't believe in religion or any particular faith in that. And I asked her, what would you do in that situation? And she would be like, just sit there and wait to see the outcome, because there's nothing to do. And I found that so different from my approach, right? I feel like I always believed that people can say they don't believe, which is fine, but I've always thought that in the moments of when push comes to shove, in those moments of like extreme despair, I always felt that people go back to the roots of asking for something to help them.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that once or twice. I don't believe in God, but I've definitely talked to God before, been like, I will do
anything,
whatever you want. Just, don't let me eat this broccoli. I don't want to eat it. Like, just, any way to get out of a situation, right? Yeah, I've definitely been there before too. But it's really in dire circumstances.
But so that's my curiosity, because my one friend was like, nothing. In dire situations, nothing. And I thought that was very fascinating.
She must have gone through some... Has she gone through some real tough stuff in life?
I don't think so.
Oh, then maybe we'll see. Maybe
I'll revisit that conversation with this
when she does. Yeah, when she does, because there are moments, and obviously you know my stance. I'm exactly the same as her, but you know when you're faced with a situation that is completely out of your control, not even just completely out of your control, because a lot of life is out of your control, but a situation where you can't, the creativity of your mind cannot stretch to the point of there is a no-win scenario. Like this feels like a no-win scenario. The creativity of my mind can't find a solution, then I'm like, there is a God.
I mean, there is a reason, I think, you know, in all these major locations, be it hospitals, airports, there's a place of worship. I think people, you know, need that comfort when they are about to enter a situation beyond their control.
Oh my days, yeah. It's comforting when, you know, when Dad passed away, we walked him down to the places of worship. There's many different types of worships, and in that one we were at like a chanting booth, and it was like Buddhist, and it was a comfort. Of course it's a comfort. I'm gonna accept that. Yeah, I'm humble enough to be like, I don't have a religion, I don't believe in you know, I am agnostic, right? There's a difference between being an agnostic and being an atheist. Atheist believes in there is nothing, like your friend, nothing. But I told you I'm agnostic, and it's a comfort. And that's why I'm like, again, back to I'm softening towards religion and faith, because if it's a comfort, it's a comfort. And I think that's fantastic. And I think everyone deserves that comfort, you know?
Yeah.
In moments of need, right?
Of course.
I think so.
Well, now to kind of pivot this away a little bit from us necessarily, but curious to know kind of your family members and your friends. How do they view all of these topics? What do you think, you know? What do you think of this?
I have a lot of friends that are very much atheist.
Really? Like
new.
Like done with any of this?
Yeah. And when I say a lot, I mean like I don't have that many friends. So like, you know, just a handful, like 2 or 3.
The majority then.
Yeah. But then other ones that, you know, grew up with religious parents and found that religion was quite a heavy weight on them, even though they didn't believe they were...
From what perspective?
Like, they had to go to Sunday school. They didn't want to go to Sunday school. They, you know, were told to, you know, behave a certain way, because religion said so, and, you know, hold hands and... when you pray before dinner, even though they don't believe in it, you know, so doing things out of respect for the person rather than their own beliefs. And so out of that, they have kind of a negative connotation because they feel like they're made to do something that they don't really want to do.
Okay.
And then I don't really have very many religious friends, and I didn't realize this until recently that my mom, you know, she reads more, like, she practices more Buddhism than I expected growing up, and I realized that I had that growing up quite a bit. It wasn't very, like, explicit, like, we're not going to temple specifically to pray. It was more like, just, like, minor, small things added here or there spiritually throughout life, I think she definitely influenced me for sure. Just subliminally. I'm going to tell her that over the weekend. I'm going to be like, Mom, you inceptioned me throughout my entire life, and now I feel like I'm Buddhist because of you. I'm going to put blame it on her. No, so yeah, I don't really have a lot of variation in... After I read the script for this, I was like, I really should get to know more religious people. The last religious person that I got closer to was a classmate in school here, and... when I was in my master's program here not too long ago, he says he's not very religious, but he is the most religious person that I know. Buddhist, he's Buddhist, and he like...
Taoist, maybe?
Buddhist, I think.
Okay.
What's Matsu?
Taoist,
alright. He's Taoist then.
Yeah.
He does the pilgrimage every year.
Oh, wow.
And he goes to temple, and he like does things like... If I don't eat beef for 2 years, or if I get into school, for example, I won't eat beef for 2 years. And I was like, and that's not religious? He goes, no, I know way more religious people than me. I'm like, wow, I am, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. That's pretty, I think that's, you know.
Well, he's young too, and I'm hard-pressed to find a lot of young people these days that are very religious. Older people, I get it. Younger people, the internet is so prevalent, there's so much other information out there. It must be a way of life. It must be a discipline that they're into. I don't know. See, that's the thing. I need to know more. Religious people, I need to know more.
With that said, though, so comparing just like culturally, I think people that I know in Latin America and the US, people who grew up like going to church and everything, I see them maybe not following that as much. But in Taiwan, people do follow traditions a lot more. And yes, you can argue it's just tradition, but there's also the inherent belief if you don't do it, bad things will happen. Yeah. So that is some sort of faith. That is some sort of conviction. Yeah. So I do think people maybe, I won't generalize to Asia because that's so broad, but I think in Taiwan people are more religious?
Traditional and religious, both of those. I definitely agree with you because you have people that burn they burn stuff every month and they have to burn it every month. Yeah. Otherwise their business will fall or something, And I found that so interesting because this is interesting to me about humanity in general. They're all praying. They're all, like, just imagine, everyone's praying for the same thing, that their business will be okay. Okay? Mm-hmm. What's the likelihood of that? Just like, it's like 100% rate. So it feels to me that there's...
Yeah, but you can always argue 100% of people are praying, but not all of them mean it.
Ooh, that's scandalous. I like that.
But that's the argument, right? If you don't really mean it, if you're not really devout, if you don't really believe in it, you're not going to get it. That's the inherent belief. Like, that's the inherent way I think a lot of the religion works.
I think that logically could make sense in the sense that, like...
I mean, let's just not even make it too, like, big. As many of you know, I do have friends who come here to go to the love temple that people pray at. And it says you have to really mean when you pray. If you really don't want to find love and you pray, it doesn't matter. You won't find your husband.
I mean, this is the fortune-telling, thing. It's where you get your fortune told and you believe it, right? And the thing is about it, it's the intention. It is the intention.
But I think it's slightly different. Fortune-telling, I think it's more reading into your life versus... If you're praying, because we're going back to this praying, if you're praying for something, but if you inherently don't mean it or don't want it, or, are not 100% in, then it's not going to happen.
But it's about choice. You choose. You want it. Your intentions.
You mean your actions? But that I don't think that goes with that argument, because choice. Like you're saying, how would that fit into the business? Like someone's purposefully not doing something for the business to not have it go well? I think you can argue maybe they're not working as hard, so maybe. Yeah, like you can, because one thing is to just ask for things, and one thing is to want to be blessed for your actions, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think at the end of the day, I do want to differentiate that a little bit from my perspective, that just because you're relying on a higher power doesn't mean if I just sit there, I'm going to be given things just dropped from the sky.
Yeah.
I think that's, I think sometimes people think that's also how you ask for things, which might not be true.
I mean, I don't think it is. But, it could be. Then you're just leaving up to luck.
Because that goes back to your friend, giving up beef, because he's in exchange, like, I will put in this effort for, some sort of goodwill.
Yeah, but life is not alchemy. That, it feels different. That's not like, that feels like a quid pro quo. But what you were talking about makes, in my mind, seems more like, that is what I want, I'm going to pray for it, but I'm also going to go for it. It's not me giving something up, it's me trying hard, putting efforts into that.
No, but his way of putting effort is to not eat beef.
To give up something.
Yeah, your effort can also be abstaining from something. To be healthier, I'll abstain from eating junk food,
That's directly related.
Okay, so your thing is like two different things?
That feels like alchemy.
Okay.
Maybe. But it worked for him. And I'm proud of him for that, because he definitely did not eat beef. And the thing is, he loves beef. And I'm just thinking about my favorite meat and not eating it for 2 years.
I also recently had a friend tell me she's not doing, she's not drinking for a whole year because of something she asked for.
No.
So we'll see. We'll know in a year.
All right.
Do you think culture plays a role in all of this? I mean, I guess we did say it did a little bit.
Speak more about it. What do you want to know?
Just whether a lot of these differences we're talking about, people leaning towards it and not, it's not just like one's belief. It's not like everyone hit 20s and then decided, there's no more God. I think it's also society, it's community, it's who you're around. And I do believe that actually. Because a lot, like we just argued, in Taiwan, people are more leaning towards tradition and all that because of the surrounding areas, because of who they are with. Versus if you grew up in, I don't know, where's the more like atheist countries, maybe there's more of that reasoning as well.
I do find that in Taiwan, they are quite religious and traditional, and that definitely plays a part. It's tradition, for sure.
Because what we're seeing a lot is in a lot of the more emerging markets, people are much more religious now. And there's this like, a humorous thing that's happening where a lot of for example, the Catholic bishops and whatnot, they are bringing people from Africa back to Europe because there are not enough people in Europe to take up these senior roles within the church. And it's really, they find it funny because the whole point, the reason why Africa or South America is much more religious now is because of, the colonialism of all of it. So it was like people were colonized to learn about this religion. And it's funny now they're coming back to the original place to kind of, do the teachings again. And that's like,
the irony of it is very interesting.
But it's because of the culture and where you are. So I think that's interesting.
Can you speak more about it? Because the thing that's, calling out my mind was I was reading, Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach recently, and I haven't finished the book, so don't judge me on that. But when I was reading it, one thing that I found really interesting, how she was saying that religion has actually been so ingrained in Western society that it's now bled into cultures within that culture, and you don't even have to be religious or, specifically for America, it would be Christian.
Yes. To
feel the weight of it, to feel the presence of it.
Yes.
That it's now culturally ingrained.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Two things. I think what you're mentioning is how religion does play a role in systemic things. And that definitely becomes more of a sociological discussion, which I do think it does happen, because you can also argue why Boston and Philly, one of my classes, we compared these two cities, the development, the rules, the people that come out of these cities, etc. And a lot of them, you can tie it back to kind of the religious origins. So yes, no one living there needs to be from the same religion, but you can feel it in how the laws are built, a lot of these like the way business is done, etc. So that's, I think, one aspect of it. I think what I'm talking about is also whether you are more leaning towards a religion or a community is also because of your community's influence. If everyone around you is within that, you are more likely to be part of the Catholic system, and whatnot, versus if you are not surrounded by this culturally from a country, then, like, for example, if a Taiwanese person grew up in the US, none of the traditions we're talking about here will apply because culturally and community-wise, they're not surrounded by that. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I think religion and culture are often
intertwined.
They often go hand in hand a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like my own family's culture, when me and my sisters lived in the States, we obviously didn't go back home. Maybe it would just be the three of us, or, two of us plus brother-in-law, and we would do Chinese New Year, and we would just make dumplings.
That's
and
so sweet.
Have oranges, and it would be super simple. Like, that's it. Dumplings and oranges. That is it. And that'd be our little cultural, traditional thing. And it is community. I told you, like, at the beginning of this episode when we were filming, my dad, growing up, really actually liked the Catholic Church. He ended up not being Catholic, but he really enjoyed the community that it gave him. The sense of comfort and purpose and, the community that it gave him.
No, I was going to say, like, but did he, because you did mention he leaned more into the Buddhism teaching overall afterwards. But was there a particular moment he decided to opt out of Catholicism? Or is it just time in life?
He traveled the world. He came to Taiwan. He lived in Taiwan for a bit, married a Taiwanese wife. There wasn't... the community that he surrounded himself in, the new community that he surrounded himself in was not very Catholic, and the easiest one to come to was
That's a great example of how community impacts, religion and faith. Yeah.
Yeah, and how a person can change.
Yeah. So I think the last question, just to wrap up this topic, just to tie it back to crossroads. Why do you think is at these influxes, as you mentioned, where people either lean into religion or lean away from religion?
You go first.
I think usually in these influxes, crossroads, people probably are at their most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So either you need a change, and sometimes that change can be from your religion perspective. So either everything you've been doing in the past has always worked, and now at this moment in time, it doesn't anymore. So you change, or you feel like, it's the same way, right? It can be either way, and that's when you're also most open to receiving a new perspective.
I love that example. It's exactly how I feel. I mean, that recently I've been going through my own spirituality awakening and, being open-minded to different things. And it was the same concept of what I was saying earlier about how when shit really hits the fan and you can't find a creative solution, it is comforting, and it's easier to feel like you're tethered, if you go towards religion or a higher power.
To have an anchor, yeah.
To have an anchor, yeah. Because, it's scary to be unanchored, to be untethered, floating around in the nether. I don't know. It's scary. Of course it is. And so it's nice, even if it only lasts for like a minute, it's nice to have that grounding for 2 seconds. And then maybe you'll go a different direction. And I completely agree with you. I think the way that you said it, the way that you put it, is exactly how I feel about it. Why do people go towards it? It is because they're in their most vulnerable state. They're in their most raw state. And it's like being a child again. It's like getting in touch with your inner child and molding it from there. Redefining your belief system.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just really curious, right? How people can experience the same thing and then decide 2 different directions. You know what I mean?
What worked before doesn't work now.
Yeah.
Be creative and change it up. See if that works. See if that works better. Eventually down the road, something else could happen where that entire thing opens up again. And you could go down another path.
Life is unpredictable that way.
It is unpredictable, and you have to kind of try out different things. Try on different hats until one fits better.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, to your point, it's about comfort. It's about feeling anchored. And I think for those who lean towards some sort of faith, I think it's just to have that hope. Be it real, be it not, we as humans need to live with hope.
I agree.
Well, I think that's going to be what we wrap up on. So I think just to recap a little bit, we definitely talked all over our views on religion and faith and how we perceive it and how maybe people around us perceive it. Not to debate the merits of either or, but just how, it can really be a way to guide our lives.
Guide our lives. I think, and our discussion isn't to, say what's right or wrong, like you have said already, but it's more like be open to the idea, because you really never know what you might be open to when you are in your most vulnerable state. Yeah. You could be open to something that you didn't even know you might be open to. And I think just keeping that open mind and, hope is a beautiful thing. So I think, again, keep an open mind and see what happens.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Hope is a beautiful thing, sometimes dangerous.
It can be. All right. We know that. All right, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. This was not necessarily a funny episode, but I think it was an interesting one to talk about moments of crossroads, moments of chapters of change. Yeah. The only constant.
We're definitely open to other perspectives. If you have something that you want to chime in with, we are open to listening. And thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media and tune in for next episode.
Which I think will be an interesting one because Dannie has been really wanting us to talk about it.
Me?
Yeah, it's going to be the one... This topic is not the one I want to talk about. You just want to talk about it because you're fascinated with my interest in it.
Sometimes, yeah. Fortune telling. We're going to be talking about fortune telling, all right? Now you know. All right. Catch you guys later. Bye.
All right. Bye.